Today we did something a little bit cheeky, maybe even putting in on the daily time frame a low and a new high. Very interesting as we test that 5-day moving average where the short people like to come and pile back in those shorts on the SPY. So we will be paying attention to this, but for the most part with AMC earnings, with Nvidia earnings, and with some interesting little bits of data today, it seems that indecision was the mark here. So this means that no one is safe going into tomorrow, and you might be a little bit less safe, even more so, because we do have even more implied volatility than today going into tomorrow, which is Thursday. So let's get into some shorter time frames. Let's really take a good look at the SPY and Qs and see what we can come up with for tomorrow with some new daily expected moves. Let's get into it. We will be taking a further look over at Nvidia, but we do always want to see if there are any signals at key areas. You have the bottom of the channel, you have wicks down towards the weekly expected move that seem to not want to drop down further, and you do have this MACD by the center line, which is a good time to start to look for reversal signals, and that's where we pull up the 30-minute chart and we talk about what we were talking about a little today and give you guys those daily expected moves first, right? So daily expected moves, 602.58 to the upside, 586. 50 to the downside. Notice they haven't moved much, but they have spread out just a tiny bit. So 587 is still important is overall what I'm getting at there, and 602.50 for tomorrow if we want to make good structure to the upside. So this is very interesting for the SPY because we were pointing this out live. The area that you really want to get to is here. If you do reject anywhere around that 5-day moving average, which we did, you always add up those probabilities to test the low and go make a new one. That is the most probable thing to happen even right now as this stock sits right here. Now, if we do see continued positivity from this stock, we did mention that this might be some sort of small slanted head and shoulders that could produce some kind of upside move, and that would be fantastic. That's an overall bullish thing that we are looking for. But we notice that we are in a time of extreme fear, right? We have extreme fear going on right now as we're at the bottom of the channel, as people continue to pile on some bearish bets, but really not that many. We really look at this, and another drop down would potentially convince people to go a little bit more bearish in these areas. So something key to watch out for tomorrow is just, is that 30-minute going to cross up? Because if it does, I think that's the moment where you say, hey, high or low, and we are going to go test something like 602.58. So that would be very, very good for the SPY to do. The only other thing is we need to see that price action in the morning, right? We do have Nvidia earnings that are going to affect some things here, and we are going to talk about a few things that we were looking at over on Patreon today as well. And the big thing here is if we do not see that positivity, or that positivity goes up and fails that move, not able to curl up this MACD, well, then you would be pointing directly towards that 587 level, and I think that's what we want to be paying attention to. We are still looking for those basing out signals because the 2-hour was oversold and looks like it needs some kind of relief here. Whether that happens down here or right now, we are paying attention to if this thing can sporadically move to the upside. That would be interesting. But also if we break down to lower levels, and even if we do get a 30-minute divergence, just watch for if we get some kind of rejection from this 2-hour chart whenever it does cross up to the upside. So we are still looking at the positioning of this 2-hour MACD, and it is telling us that a lower high would be the more probable thing from just the positioning of the MACD. So we're going to need potentially some kind of V shape in order to head to the upside. And usually if you want a V shape, you really want retail getting bearish, and I think this move would really cause that, but we'll see what happens tomorrow. Price action is the most important thing. You can see why we're talking about bullishness. If you've been a part of this channel for a while, or if you are just someone new here and you're really wondering why we're thinking there's going to be a bounce here, well, that's because if you've been a part of this channel for a while, you really understand what these purple lines are. You understand that these are weekly expected moves from the options market, and this is what's priced in from the options market with a 68% chance to close in here by Friday. Is it Friday right now? No, but we are at the lower end, which would say we have a 32% chance to potentially see something crazy down at lower levels, but by the end of the week, it would say we have a 68% chance from these levels to potentially bounce from. So we are paying attention to that. Notice we do have the rejection as of right now on the 30 minutes. Still, if this 30-minute curls down, it would be negative, but we did talk about this on the Patreon, how the Qs could now use that weekly to create that higher low. So if this is able to see that positivity and the 2-hour is able to cross up, we would expect us to at least be able to get to 524.58 using our our daily 68 zone, right? So if you're new here, the red lines are your daily moves, the purple lines are your weekly moves, and the yellow lines are your monthly moves. And we look for signals around those areas, whether I'm a short-term trader using the daily, or maybe I'm someone who's a little more patient. I'm looking for monthly signals. Those have really been playing out, and we've shown a bunch of those off over the last week. So what we're really watching here is just, does that 2 hour curl up? And I think the Qs are a great look here, because when you really zoom out on it, it's deeper on that 2 hour. We can get that reaction, but you notice in these areas, remember in these areas, we were talking about making that right shoulder. And we never did. And we talk about this sometimes on this channel, and I think we want to be aware of it. If the 2 hour is crossing up, the MACD positioning is suggesting that that would have to be a very strong move to sustain itself. So if that's able to cross back down near that center line, we need to be aware of that, because maybe we're going to go make the right shoulder that could have been. Maybe that right shoulder is going to actually be the thing that convinces people to go bullish. But at this moment, we're really looking for possibilities of V-shaped recoveries. And so if these V-shapes are going to come, then we're going to see big moves to the upside, and most likely see something on the daily be able to gap up eventually. So we'll be looking out for those things. But I just wanted to point out the Qs as a reason for why we're looking at least some kind of bounce to get us out of these lower levels for the 2 hour, where this could take you up and then maybe fail. Maybe we need to make a 2 hour divergence, right, before we actually form that base. So we're watching for this. But the statement from this video, if you haven't heard it enough, me saying the word base enough, is we're really paying attention if this makes a base, because if it does, then that would suggest that we could potentially go make a new all-time high, and we might be actually going up and making those new all-time highs sooner than you think. So let's just keep paying attention to these. So for tomorrow, we're paying attention if that 30-minute can continue that positivity and curl up this 2 hour chart. It would suggest higher prices, but if we run into a wall and we end up falling down, just watch out if there's some kind of sneaky divergence, maybe going on into next week. And little hints from things like IWM and DIA are more so suggesting the structure looks good. This is curled down, so we still want to be aware of downside, kind of like the SPY, but this had such a clean divergence on IWM that it looks like small cats might catch a bid, but small caps might catch a bid here. If they're able to curl back up and take back that 5, that would be plenty to curl up this 2 hour chart. Yes, the 2 hour chart is curled up. You see the green on the histogram, but it's not necessarily the best confirmation, right? We know the end of the day only has 30 minutes in it. We know that this is not technically closing strong above that 9, and it's not even taking back the 5 either. So we need to be paying attention to these things. It just means to us, watch for those little moves down and reactions, watch for us to actually take back the 5, maybe retest these areas to actually head higher. But from this type of look, it looks like IWM on the 2 hour may make an attempt to go retest the breakdown area that was really important. And as that was such a important piece of support, I assume it could come in as some kind of resistance. So if this is going to be a lackluster move, I know this would be a good move, but if this is going to fade from that area, that would be where that happens. So you really in that area want to see a strong move, see that bounce off the 5 to go back into higher levels for IWM. But IWM showing great divergences, which really makes me still inclined to think that we're about to see some kind of 2 hour move to the upside. Now, things like Apple, notice this, right? We were talking about 250, and then 250 gets hit, and I go, hey, that's the time to actually make a decision. And then the next day, boom, we're down, right? And where are we? Well, we're right where we thought, 240, right? We said 240 is the first level to pay attention to. This doesn't have 30-minute divergence, and it's a little deep, so we will pay attention if it needs more time to kind of bottom out here or something. But in this area, we can see the levels we're reacting to. If this is some kind of random move, right? Not a 30-minute move that's just going to make a divergence, but actually a little bit stronger. We want to pay attention if that strong move takes you up towards these areas. You see that the 2 hour chart could curl up and go fill that gap, and that still might be a slight problem for this MACD. So that's just something I'm being aware of at this moment. And I always want to be open to Apple going down to 236.36 right now, and there are no 30-minute basing out signals, so this does not have to bounce. If it did, it might just be someone trying to catch a bottom, and then we could see that roll. The more important thing is the 2-hour is positive. So if that 2-hour crosses up, we could say that extended move to take out these levels, make a new high is there. But if that 2-hour divergence is there, ooh, that's not going to be a good sign for the momentum to the upside. That does tell us that the daily scale can curl down if that were to happen. So we just don't want to see divergences, right? We don't really want to see those at this point. Now, one thing I just wanted to bring to your attention for Apple is just the buying pressure that we do have here. I know it's a sloppy line. I probably should make a little bit better one, but the buying pressure that we do have here, if you really clone this out and make this into some kind of flagging here, you'll just notice it is holding pretty well with the price action in here, right? One moment to the upside, but holding with the price action. So if that daily does cross down, don't think that Apple is safe from experiencing another big drop, because this could all be some kind of massive flag to actually ship Apple down to somewhere around $200 to $210. So just be aware of that for the time being, okay? If the daily crosses down, it is a bad thing. Right now, it looks like we need some kind of 30-minute bounce to get out of those oversold conditions for the 30-minute. Tesla is an interesting one because the 2-hour divergence is what we needed to hold today. We did not hold it. We did not hold it. So if this thing did V-shape and reverse around, I know weekly expected moves, people on Patreon paying attention to this, but we do not see the positivity that we need to see in order to confirm, like, hey, momentum looks good here. So what we're really looking for now is we need that confirmation above the 5. Because we're so far away from it, we could even see a 2-hour move that even goes slightly above the 5, maybe even go fill this gap and then turn down again. We really want to see a floor here, unless we're going to V-shape, right? So if we're going to V-shape, we might just end up curling up a daily chart eventually and seeing some kind of upward swing. It's important to note for Tesla, we are talking about possibilities for the SPY to go to a new all-time high. But is that the biggest possibility for Tesla? Well, if it drug out for a long time, right, it would have to take a while. But if that would take place, you'd really want to get to something like 422, 423, get up to these type of areas on the daily scale, curl back down, curl back up, then you can get to those new all-time highs. But something to be aware of here is lower high is the more probable thing. So if this is a lackluster move that just takes you a little bit above 357.78 and you fail that move, we see 2-hour divergence, you got to be worrisome about Tesla. The most probable thing based on the positioning of this MACD at this moment is not like this time, not like this time. It's more like a time where you are very likely to make a lower high. So just be aware of that. And we will stay aware of this for you and give you new weekly expected moves for next week in case that fades towards the end of the week next week, right? We still want to be paying attention. These are still bearish signals that have confirmed. Amazon, a little bit different story here, right? Amazon actually showing a major move outside, but actually giving you and holding, I believe, let me go check on this real quick again. Yeah, when I looked at it the last time, right, before this big drop, we had those good divergences. You don't really have those now, but look what Amazon was able to do. It's kind of a good example of getting to the key level, taking back the key level with a gap, retesting it right now. If that can just curl up tomorrow, take back the 5, you can see some positivity there. So no divergence for Amazon at this moment for the 30-minute. 2-hour is what we want to be watching here, potentially for a higher low or a divergence at this point. And I believe that as we just save this thing, I'm guessing that 213.52 is much more important than we thought. And so I think that this is more likely to see positivity that then sees those little lower high or higher lows, higher lows. That would be important. The positioning of the MACD, not as bad as Tesla, but when we look at this, the divergence above, left head, the right shoulder that could have been, could come into play. So if we do catch some kind of run here going into March, we might want to be paying attention to monthly expected moves, and we might want to be watching this 233.50 level. So we will have updated monthly expected moves for you Patreon members out there. If you want to join for the month, this is the best time to join. We're heading into the last 2 days of this month, and this weekend you're going to get the most value for $7, right? You're going to get hundreds of dollars of value for just $7. We put out an update video during market hours every single week. We put out 2 last week with great trade setups for JP Morgan and great setups for Meta and great setups for GLD, right? And so let's look at those in case you wanted to see how those plays actually went, right? We want to be paying attention to how those plays are going because they're high probability plays. And the play here was to potentially go down and look at this and go, okay, is there going to be a gap in here? Can we go down to these levels? And since we were paying attention to monthly expected moves, it gave us the actual area where we could potentially take a short position, and that's fantastic. Boom, short position, falls down right away. You make your money quick. It's great. These are the levels we were paying attention to bounce. So we're right at that level. Great trade setup. Now let's look over at JP Morgan. That was another one that we talked about, and boom to the downside, right? This is another one that we paid attention to. We didn't even have monthly expected moves, but the signals here were so good on each time frame that the daily looked like it needed to curl down, and now it's curling down. Guess what? Now it could potentially catch a bounce, right? We did go down into these areas towards 250, so we can catch a bounce at any time for this bad boy, and that's a great thing. But thank you for showing us the signals in the charts, okay? Thank you for showing us those, because we ended up with a good trade, and that's fantastic. The other one that we ended up doing, and something we pay attention to on this channel, is Meta. And Meta showed the good signals as well. I mean, look at the 2 hour, just telling you. And this one, we did have a monthly expected move, which you can get on Patreon right now for $7. That was right here. And so as we get to that, we start to go, okay, do we see anything bad? Yes, we do. We see divergence on the MACD. We see divergence on the RSI at the same time on the 2 hour. That means a daily turndown is going to come. Well, daily pullback is the most probable thing. This is a big run, so we're looking at this point right here, and potentially all the way down to 630 down at the lower levels. Now, we've seen a wick come in at that point, so if this daily can curl up at any time, that can go make a new high, and we'll be watching out for this in March. And this is overall the trap that could set up in March later on, and Meta will be a very good one to watch to pay attention to that. As we look into those shorter time frames, just looks like a 2 hour bounce for now. We still could make that quick 2 hour divergence, maybe go a little bit lower towards that 633. The 30 minute at this moment, though, it looks like it's really trying to take back a key level and break through that to take back the 5. So if we're able to see positivity tomorrow, then it really looks like to me, we might be going back into a positive trend for Meta, and Meta might end up curling up 2 hours. Meta might end up curling up dailies when this is said and done. So just be paying attention to it. Let's go talk about Nvidia. Nvidia seeing that good upside right now from the earnings. Remember, we're not reading into this too much, guys. I do not read into, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to sit there and say the spiel over and over and over again. It's a 50-50 flip. The only thing we were watching was the structure and the fact that we had other hints like stocks that are all hitting their weekly expected moves, including the Qs. So if that is happening, and I highly doubt Nvidia is going to be a reason for the crash at this point. I really do think for this, we just wanted to pay attention to, hey, the Qs are hitting a weekly expected move, which means most likely people are going to get things wrong from this area. And so we were just paying attention to the head and shoulders here, taking that into consideration with Apple, how Apple could come down and Nvidia could start to go up. And that's overall what we were looking into there. Not a ton to do. Okay, now something that was interesting was actually Microsoft. I think Microsoft was an interesting one, coming back down into the zone, right? We look at this 30-minute chart, we see what's it trying to do? Well, it's really trying to make a floor, but if it continues to just go sideways, we could end up seeing another drop, right? If this 30-minute just curls down, we can see another drop down to that 393.20. We said yesterday, I think you're very likely to go down a little bit deeper towards 393.20, and that ended up happening with a wick. So that's great. Maybe that job's done. We got to see if that 5 is taken back, because if you can take back the 5, you really see how this could remain volatile, but still turn in the upward direction with some kind of formation here for Microsoft. So we're paying attention to this because there's 2 hour divergence extended across. It's just not on the MAC, or it's on the MACD, it's not on the RSI at the same time. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. It is a reversal signal. It's just not the most confident one, but it would say that this daily, as we are going into some liquidity zones here that have proven to hold us up very, very well for Microsoft, it is saying we could catch a bounce from those areas. Google is very interesting to me, and it's probably interesting to a lot of Patreon members at this moment. Now, I seriously wanted to talk about Google because Google is doing some very low percentage things right now, right? It's going into low percentage zones, which is a very scary thing. You have to be very cautious with this and make sure you're seeing confirmations, okay? I know that there's a weekly expected move up in these areas somewhere, right? We know that we're below weekly expected move, trying to make those reversal signals. You see the divergence on the RSI. It's just not on the MACD at the same time. But we are also way outside of a monthly expected move. So this really can see a big reaction, and we have a lot of implied volatility. So I'm interested to see, just so you know, the 2-hour divergence that we were paying attention to, it ended up leaking down further and further. So you got rid of it on the RSI, but you have it on the MACD. So it's confusing because you have like a 30-minute divergence on one indicator, not the other, and then you have a 2-hour divergence on one indicator, but not the other one. So it's going to be a rough one, and this might be a very hard trade to execute. And so I'm trying to manage it very, very carefully at this point, right? I'm still going to manage that trade for the time being, and then see if we get that curl up right away in the morning, and then I can maybe make that play. So we'll be paying attention to this throughout. AMC did have earnings, but the 30 minutes able to cross down. That's saying lower prices will watch out for divergence, right, towards these lows. Because a 30-minute divergence, you know, oh, no one can read into how AMC is going to catch a bounce. Well, 30-minute divergence catches a bounce. 2-hour divergence behind it catches a good bounce. So be looking for times where there's 30-minute and 2-hour divergence or daily time frame cross-ups and things like that. It's not rocket science, honestly, but if you just know what to look for and you're not super pessimistic on technical analysis and you understand that manipulation does cost money, then you understand that momentum is still going to show you these things. So watch out for divergence. The 2-hour still needs to curl up. That did not happen. Right, we were talking about left head, right shoulder. Well, this is taking its time. So if you want that to curl up, you really got to solidify like, hey, this is a higher low, or hey, we're making a divergence at this point for AMC. And then you got to get through 394 this week. GME, very interesting. GME, very interesting, okay? Because GME, if I look at this daily chart, you're seeing daily divergence now. Isn't that interesting? We're seeing daily divergence and decent structure from AMC at the same time. So, you know, if you don't think GME is in the place to make that good move, well, if it curls up on this MACD, that is divergence. And the last time that we saw daily divergence was down in these areas. And were you paying attention? Because shortly after that, yeah, it might have taken some time, but this thing was able to go to higher prices. And we see that. We see that these type of things do matter. The signals here gave us it to head to the upside, and now we have that here. So if that crosses up, I think you got a good shot to take out that 28.58. And if we get this to last until Friday, and we don't necessarily see 28.58 taken out, we will have an updated level for you over on Patreon. The last thing I wanted to go over in this video, we're not going to talk too much about the dollar, right? We're not going to talk too much about this, but this looks like on the 4-hour chart that we like to look at, it's trying to really solidify that base, but you have to be aware that you're still rejecting off of the 5. If this curls down again, you take out these lows, you're probably heading a little bit lower for the dollar, which could mean some positivity for stocks, but we see times where the dollar goes up and the stock market goes up at the same time. We just pay attention to if there are other trap signals while that is happening. So the dollar could catch a bounce from here, though. The dollar actually looks like it's trying to form some kind of base. You can see all the divergences down there on your RSI. It's very, very nice. But something I think is more important is volatility. Volatility, very interesting for volatility. Now, I almost said this during the live stream where I was like, what if we just react down to here for a retest and then we make the right shoulder that almost could have been back in the past? That looks like the case to me. So the thing is, volatility is still turned up. It's still above the 5 and it just got a retest. This thing could come back with some anger issues tomorrow, right? If you have a huge amount of implied volatility, if volatility wants to kick in, it can be troublesome. But if this 30-minute just rotates back down, that actually would be a good sign for volatility to drop off again. We'll watch out for divergence. But if this actually just wipes it out and we don't make a divergence at this point, I think we got to be paying attention to the market because we could be V-shaping at this moment. We do notice that the 2-hour is curled down and looks like it needs more room to the downside. So still, the bearish thing would be anytime this 2-hour is able to curl up in positive territory. And those would be a lot of those lower high scenarios, right? The 2-hour lower high scenario would be visible on the volatility index just by seeing a 2-hour curl down and curl up. So the bearish is pretty simple to see there. So what we're going to do is mainly just see how the price action behaves tomorrow. We're going to look for things that look like they could be opportunities, as a lot of things are at weekly expected moves, and then we can try to make a decision. And if we're very diligent and always keeping in mind our risk, really trading like water, we really shouldn't be that fearful of taking plays because we are the ones in control. We are the ones who keep ourselves accountable. So whatever decision I make, I better have a plan for when to take profit and if something goes wrong, right? If something goes wrong, I need to have a plan for how I'm going to get out of that position. So I would encourage everyone out there to start to make plans before you even execute the trade. And I think it will benefit you further into your future as a trader. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope you guys had all the luck in the world today. I hope you have all the luck in the world tomorrow with your trades. I will see you in the morning. Thank you so much for joining the live show. I'm super happy that it was able to be up and running pretty well. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. You guys are fantastic. I couldn't appreciate you guys more. And actually, maybe I can. Maybe I'll keep appreciating you guys more and more and more every single day. Okay. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great night. Peace out.